Call it unschooling, call it fun schooling, call it delight learning. I don't care what you call it. I'm homeschooling. Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. And hopefully I can make this video not be 4.5 hours long. Okay, I have done a lot of prayer and a lot of trying to find the right words to make this video. This is a very dramatic opening, but bear with me. Many of you have asked for a follow-up of, okay, you're not, after my video of I'm saying goodbye to Charlotte Mason, as to, okay, so what are you doing right now? Okay, in order, I think, to really illustrate this, I'm a storyteller, so I kind of use illustrations with this. And I kind of want to talk about, or I want to share with you a example. I grew up in the Church of Christ denomination. Actually, we're non-denominational. And when I met my husband, he was a Lutheran pastor's son. And when we were courting, my original purpose was, well, I don't want to be Lutheran, so he's going to have to be Church of Christ. And isn't it funny how God usually works in those areas of weakness? Like for me, it was very prideful of me. And I had to really, search out and come to the conclusion of, okay, where doctrinally does each one sit at? And that's a whole different story, but the main thing I want to tell you is there was a lot of things that I could reconcile with biblically in joining the Lutheran Church, except for that biggest point, joining the Lutheran Church. The biggest struggle I had with it is because I kept telling my husband, but I'm a Christian, I'm not following Luther, I'm following Christ. And it was a really big leap for me to do this. And in a similar way, Charlotte Mason kind of is like that. And wow, I kept that to like 3 minutes. I'm impressed with myself. Every time I've practiced, it's been a 10-minute explanation. Whew, we're getting better. And so Charlotte Mason is kind of like that. When I say I'm homeschooling, people tend to go, well, what methodology? Well, I'm in Charlotte Mason. And then you start doing things and it's like, but that's not how these Charlotte Mason experts are doing it. So, and then, I wouldn't get that a constant comment, maybe like one or two or a question here and there. Again, it wasn't things that I was getting a ton of. I wasn't getting constant comments. Actually, for the most part, most of my comments were, this is so encouraging. I really resonate with you. This makes sense to me. But there are just a few of those that you start to wonder, well, should I be calling myself a Charlotte Mason homeschooler if I'm not going to follow Ambleside with my boys anymore, and we're probably going to follow more of like a Robinson curriculum, for lack of a better terminology. I think we even do more than Robinson, but or less. So it got really difficult. It's kind of like going to a church and saying, well, I'm a Lutheran, but then you have all of these things that you don't fit within the Lutheran label. So are you a Lutheran or are you not? It's like, well, I'm a Christian. I'm a homeschooler. So removing myself from that label kind of helped clear up those murky waters of, are you doing things right? And it's kind of the same thing that we do within Christianity. Are you wearing the right length of skirt? It's so difficult to put yourself on a platform and try to show the heart of it when people are looking for the details of it. They're looking for a play-by-play of how to do things. And so some of you might be saying, well, Shalise, you chose this platform. Why are you up here if you can't take a little criticism every now and then? It's not the criticism that's difficult. What is difficult is kind of, again, using the Christian analogy, and I know not everybody that watches my video is a Christian, but that's a huge component of who I am. So I tend to use those things as illustrations because they're just ever present in my life. But it's kind of like what Paul said, to the Jew I became a Jew, to the Gentiles I'm a Gentile. In so doing that, it was, how do I want to say this? It's kind of like that in the homeschool realm of, you need a feast of ideas if I'm going to call myself a Charlotte Mason. Well, here's one way I can do it. Or you need more living book ideas. Well, here's living books ideas for these. You need, and it was easy to do that mainly because I am a helper by nature. I like to help people. I want to encourage people. But in so doing, I wasn't helping the people that needed it most, which was my kids. And so when I could remove, you know, take Charlotte Mason and kind of just wipe it off, erase it or whatever, I could then focus on their needs. And this is not something that I just woke up one day and was like, okay, that's it, I'm done. I'm no longer Charlotte Mason. It was stemmed from a ton of conversations that I would have with people in my life. It would be watching people that do Charlotte Mason well, like the fullness of it, and realizing I will never get to that point. It's realizing that I still love her ideas and methodology, and in a ideal situation, I would probably try to find it to work well with us. But I have a huge range of kids. You know, each one is different. And we're in an interesting stage of life right now with my husband back at school, working part-time, and us trying to just live daily life. I'm having to put a whole chunk of my day into working online so that I can still stay at home. In all of that, I kept thinking, but how do we homeschool then? The other day I was walking home. I go for walks, and so I was walking back, and it was late at night, and that's usually when I can just be by myself. I think clearly, there's no distractions, and I have I talk to myself, y'all. I look like a crazy woman, but I talk to myself and I have conversations with myself, and I can process things that way, which is probably another reason why vlogging is easier for me than blogging, because I can have a dialogue with myself. And I kept thinking, you know, if everything burnt up tomorrow, what would I bring back into our homeschool? And y'all, the next day I got rid of Anna Comstock's Handbook of Nature Study. I was just like, it's too big, it's too bulky. I don't ever use it. I don't ever reference it. Every time I think about, oh, I should pull that out and we could look this up, I'm like, you know what? This is a lot easier and this is not as bulky and I don't have to go through this, and it has color pictures, so I just choose that. I wasn't picking it up, and so it went. And it started this chain of events going down of like, this is how I want to homeschool. We have our little, oh, they're called something. What are they called? They're like little nature reference books. We have a bunch of little ones. There's one on like the birds of the eastern states. There's the native plants around us. There's one on trees. And there's little things that we'll pick up and look at and then we'll just put away. So in that sense, I still follow the Charlotte Mason idea, right? Everybody has the golden nature book things that I can't think of the name of. But it started just this spiral of events. The other day I pulled out my bird book, animal book, and seashore book and said, you know what? We did not enjoy this as much as we did the Apologia science books. The ones that are Charlotte Mason inspired but don't follow completely Charlotte Mason. We actually enjoyed all of those except for botany. Botany was kind of a... we struggled a little bit on that one. But we can figure out something else. So I got rid of them. Well, they're in the get rid of pile. They're actually not out of the house yet. It just started the spiral. Okay, now what do we want to do? I want the kids to love learning. Like that's the biggest part. I know learning is not always going to be fun. I have never wanted to have this homeschool of, well, if it's not fun, then don't bother learning it. I've never wanted that. Like, learning is hard work sometimes. But until I have that attention down, which is a Charlotte Mason thing, until I have these things down, I can't move in that direction. And some of that just is personality. So moving forward, I'm still taking ideas from Charlotte Mason. Insofar as specific detailed what we're going to do, that's kind of up in the air, to be honest. The other day, my son pulled out Halliburton's geography book and just read it and was telling his father about some things. But I can guarantee you in a couple of years, he ain't going to remember a thing about it. Because it just doesn't stick. He's got his mother's brain. Things just don't stick up here. The goals I have in my life are to love being with my children, to raise up children that will be strong members of where they are on earth. Like, God has placed us on this earth. I'm not placed on this earth to wish it away and long for heaven. Like, God has placed us here on earth, and I have that kind of view of life. I'm not a Christian that wakes up every morning and is like, oh, God, take me home. You know, I don't. I'm like, God, thank you for this life you've given me. There's a purpose here. I just need to learn what it is. Just reveal it to me today. And one day I'll be with you, and that'll be great. But in the meantime, this is where I am. So tell me what I need to do here. Or I need children that have that kind of mindset of God has a plan for you. God has a purpose for you. What is it, and what do you need to do in order to be available to him? So if these are my goals in homeschool, what is this going to look like? I have boys that have no desire to go to college. That might change later on, but right now they just want to know how the world works. They actually would prefer if we could figure out time travel and then go back to the 1800s. And if they figure it out, I'm joining them. But that's their goal right now. So that's kind of what we're learning right now. Call it unschooling, call it fun schooling, call it delight learning. I don't care what you call it. I'm homeschooling. It's kind of like the Christian thing. Call me a Lutheran, call me a Church of Christ, or call me non-denominational, call me whatever you want. I'm following Christ. What does the Bible say? I want to follow what the Bible says. In our state, there are certain things that you do have to meet. Let me rephrase that. In some states, there are certain things that you have to meet, and Indiana is very low on its homeschool expectations. I'm sure that will change one day, but right now I'm basking in it. Well, okay, I'm learning to bask in it, and I'm just learning my kids right now. I want them to know that learning doesn't ever stop. There's something always to learn. And I need to know how to channel their desire to learn. And right now, they just want to do. So it would be like hands-on projects, but honestly, if there's no purpose just to do a project, like, for them, that's worthless. But if I'm like, okay, you have survivalist skills that you need to hone in on. What are you going to eat? How do you know that it's safe? If I hone in on those, then I'm still teaching them how to find reliable sources, how to do things like that. And that's kind of what I'm honing in on. So what I have to show with you, I got nothing. I know the boys have survivalist books, and I constantly ask, hey, would you be able to identify this? Would you be able to find this if you were out in the middle of nowhere and had to figure out how to live? My son really wants rabbits. Like, he has a deep desire to build rabbits. And the other day, he had measuring tape. He had everything. He had paper, pencil, and he was trying to figure out the best way to make this rabbit hutch so that it would be safe, so that another dog wouldn't kill our rabbit. That made a connection to him. And I was like, okay, figure that out. He also has a desire to have a tiny house, and he wants to build it, and then he wants to fix up homes and things like that. So he watches YouTube videos on that. I just have to really limit it because it can blow out of proportion. He's finishing up his math. We've been doing Saxon, and this year we have been slowly transitioning to Matthew C because my daughter got to a point where I couldn't help her anymore in Saxon math. It has a mental block for me. And the gal that could help her said, hey, I like Matthew C. It seems to click with visual people. So she switched to Matthew C for pre-algebra. Now my son would be going into another Saxon book, and the teacher's like, hey, if he's going to be getting to this point too, why don't you just start transitioning him into Matthew C, because that would make more sense. Let's keep this flow going. My son's going to finish up math 5.4, but he will be going into math 6.5 because it's there and it's doable, and math 6.5 I can still kind of, for the most part, help with. So outside of that, we do a lot of letter writing. We are very big letter writers, and so those are practice for handwriting and for spelling and grammar and so on and so forth. So there's not a whole lot I can tell you. It's a lot of figuring things out. It's a lot of what do we want to do? What kind of family do we want to be? What can we do to just grow us as a family, as a unit? Whereas right now I feel like we're just at each other's throats. There's just so much stress right now that we're at each other's throats. And so right now our school is just, hey, we need to figure out a functional way for us to manage this, to manage life, to work together. So that's pretty much, I don't know if that answered your question, because honestly, we still come together for Bible. We still have daily read alouds. I'm a big component of that. But in sit down of what are you going to do for history? What are you going to do for this? What are you going to do for that? It's really hard because family togetherness was a big part of our learning. Like, we all learned science together. We all learned history together. And now I've got kids that need to be challenged, but that goes way over the younger kids' heads. And so they miss a ton. And I could trust the whole idea, well, they'll catch something and then later on it'll be easy. I could do that. But I love history, and right now it's kind of like, I don't understand it. Why am I even bothered to be here? So, yeah. For me, it's really hard to say, okay, I'm going to learn how to do something where I don't know where God is going to call us next. When my husband is finished, I don't know if we're going to get called to a homestead. What if this is just something I want, but not something God has called us to do? Here's the video. Here's where we're going forward. What can I share with you? I don't know. The videos I have made on Charlotte Mason, sometimes I'll go back and rewatch them and be like, okay, do I still think this way? For the most part, I don't think there's any video out there that I would say I disagree with. I just don't know how to make it work for our family right now. I don't know. So we're still a family that reads all the time, for sure. We're still a family that writes all the time. We'll still have classical music, Marty Robbins, Glenn Miller. Like, we have all of those going all the time. So call it whatever you want. Call it whatever kind of music study you want. I don't know what to tell you. Is the end gist of this. I don't know what to tell you. There's components throughout our lives that you could say, well, that's Charlotte Mason, but insofar as a daily structured routine type of way, no, I don't think we're following the perfect Charlotte Mason plan. Nature study, okay, that's a huge part of it. I love going to the different forests around here, like the Limberlost Forest, and there's different like nature walk places. I love to do that. So much so that when my husband's off on Saturdays, I'm probably just going to take off and go sometime. That's what I keep telling myself, but there's always so much to do. I have kids that don't like it at all. The one time that we found a trail on my phone and we went there and there was no trail. It was so overgrown. It was so poor, and we were just trying to figure out what to do. And I had kids that were just like, why do you do this, Mom? Why do you always go to these things? We don't like it. I don't know where I am. I am not comfortable in this. I had another twig slap me in the face. Why do you do this to me, Mom? And it's like, well, all I had was the map. I don't know what I'm doing any more than you do, but take it you don't really like adventuring. Which is very funny since they're the survivalist boys, but they didn't like it at all. So I don't do the nature walks. If I go out and I'll be like, look, there's some blue jays. They'll be interested in that. But every single mushroom that's on the path, whatever. Shelf mushrooms, they're just like, okay. And I'm like, oh, look at that color. And that is so pretty. Look at the colors and how they blend and how it's sticking up and how it's, and they're like, whatever. Where do we go hunting? So, it works for me. It's not working for them. So, to wrap this up, especially since I kind of dropped the bombshell of I'm selling like a lot of the Burgess Bird book, the Hollings geography books, and it must be like, what is she doing? I'm actually just kind of doing that. It ties in with this, and I'm going to talk forever, and I apologize, but it ties in with this. Last night I was just in tears on the couch with my husband, and I was like, I don't understand. I don't know what I'm doing. We have to figure this out, and this week, just with work, there's so many deadlines, like, all at once, but this week, the house kind of fell apart. Like, my managing of the house fell apart. And I knew it was going to happen, like, as things get going. And I knew that, and I had prepared my husband. I had kind of this whole idea. I had meals prepped. I had things that I could do to kind of transition well. But, it really bothered him. Like, for my husband, if I can show him one way that I love him with all my heart, soul, and mind, okay, that's God. Hold on, let me rephrase. There's one way I can show that I love my husband very much, is to keep a clean and tidy home. Like, if there was just one thing, it isn't the bedroom. It isn't, I love you, honey, or that you look really good. It's none of that. I can tell him that I love him so much if he can come home to a clean home. Clean and tidy home. Not just picked up, but the floors are swept and mopped. The floor is vacuumed. There is nothing on the counters. The dishes are all put away. Like, all of that. Laundry is caught up. All of that. If that's all done, I have shown him that I love him. And so this was a hard week for him too. And he made the comment that kind of has sparked this idea in my mind, and I keep going forward with it. And I've mentioned it in a few videos too, but you're going to have to just, again, this is kind of those things that just keep mulling over and over and over. He said, you know, I really liked it when we first moved in here, and there just wasn't a whole lot of stuff. Once things were unpacked and stuff, it kind of built up, and I just kept thinking, why is that? Why is it that now we have so much stuff? And the reality is, in a large family, you're going to have a lot of stuff. If everybody in a large family only had 30 items, the bare minimalist number, okay? I'm not going to count clothes or anything, but let's just say you had 30 items outside of your basic needs. That is still, for our family, 210 items that is around the house. That's still a lot of items. Okay, for 2 or 3 people, that's 60 to 90. So I'm not like being unrealistic here. It may sound like it, but I'm not. But it started this idea in my head, and that walk home and the letting go of the books that I thought I needed to have in order to have a Charlotte Mason idea, it just started this whole idea of what if I got rid of everything and had to build up this homeschool from scratch. Kind of your minimalist homeschool idea. And if I had to buy it new, because that's another thing. It's easy to buy lots of stuff when it's discounted and cheap and secondhand. But if you had to buy like it on full price, what would I keep? What would I have? That sparked a whole trail that I'm just looking at right now. I haven't even gone down. But it also made me realize I have a lot of stuff that I've chosen as a second option because the first option was too expensive for me. But if I got rid of all this extra secondhand options because the first option is so expensive, would I choose that first option? I don't know. I haven't thought of that being available to me, so I don't know. I have said a lot here, and this is going to be a long video, but that is what it is for me. But for you, you probably have a lot of things to get going to. So if there's any questions that I can address specifically, go ahead and leave it down in the comments section below. I will try to do like some kind of Q&A that I can just address them all. But insofar as this, yes, I still love the Charlotte Mason method. I still stand by the 3 principles that she had, which are children are born persons, education is an atmosphere, discipline, and a life, and habits are very important. I still stand by those 3 core ideas. Living books, nature study, getting outside, those are all phenomenal things, and I agree wholeheartedly with them. I'm just sticking to those 3 things. I'm just sticking to the 3 things that I can focus on. My kids are born persons, so what kind of personality am I working with here? Education is an atmosphere. It's every day. It's a discipline, so let's get on it, kids. This just needs to be done. And it's a life. It goes on forever. So I don't have to worry about everything today, but I also need you to realize that learning is going to go on forever, so you might as well just accept it and learn how to do it well. And habits are key in everything of life. There has been so many books written about that lately. So there is something to this. And so I want to give them those good habits, because anything else I teach them is going to be worthless unless they have good habits to take away their brain focusing too much on them and not learning enough. So that's where I'm going to go with this. That's going to be it for this. I'm focusing on those 3 Charlotte Mason things, but I said goodbye to Charlotte Mason. No, here's what I've got. I have asked my daughter, my eldest, she's 13, is there anything you want to change? She still wants to stick with Ambleside. She still just likes the challenge it gives her. And we're going with that. My son just is like, do I have to learn anything? Do I have to do anything? So we're working on that. And then the 8-year-old is just, he doesn't want to do anything either. But I think the 12-year-old, my son, my oldest son, he's starting to realize, hey, I do need to learn. So why don't I do it as quickly as I can, putting my heart into it so that I don't have to redo it. Whatever, like you can just see this transition of mature thinking with him, with a 12-year-old. And the 8-year-old's like, ugh, I don't want to do anything. I don't want to read with you. I don't want to do anything. Can we just skip school altogether? And then my 7-year-old is just like, I want to read all day. I want to do stuff all day. I want to craft all day. I want to paint all day. I could do math all day. That's fine. Can I write more letters, Mom? So there we go. It's all about trying to figure out all of their personalities. Okay, my friends, I'll wrap it up here. It's been good talking to you. I'll see you in the next video. Please don't forget the questions down below, and I'll just answer those because those will be more specific. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.